So welcome to our second video, which is E for embracing change. This is where we look at how to respond to sleeplessness differently. First of all though, I'd really like you to watch this video and see how most people generally deal with sleep problems.
We're always taught the more effort we put in, the more we'll get out of life. But of course this isn't always true. Take falling asleep for example. You can prepare in the right way, put yourself in the right position, and get yourself comfortable. But after that, well, you can't force it to happen, right? In fact, it works exactly the other way around. The harder you try, the less sleepy you become. It's only when we stop trying that we finally let go and drift off. And before we know it, we're waking up the next morning feeling refreshed, relaxed, after a good night's sleep.
So what have you tried already to resolve your sleep? I'd like you to spend a minute or so now thinking about all the things that you have done to resolve your sleep. I'd like you to think of some of the things that you've done that maybe you avoid doing, and also some of the thoughts and feelings that you have around sleep and how you deal with these. If you can pause the video now, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so sadly I don't know what you've written down, but I can tell you that we know that all of these are very common responses. Going to bed earlier, going to bed later, lying in to catch up on sleep, using drink, drugs, potions or medication to induce sleep, developing a rigid bedtime routine that has to be followed precisely, exercising more, reducing social engagements, worrying about sleep, hunting for the reason for poor sleep, criticising oneself for poor sleep, trying harder, lying in bed, waiting for sleep to come, tossing and turning, staying up later, trying to force relaxation, avoiding caffeine, napping, clock watching, forcing yourself to lie still when awake, trying to argue against or suppress anxious thoughts with other thoughts. There are many other approaches that you may also have used, and I want you to know that all of these are completely normal, because when we're experiencing something we don't like, it is instinctive to respond by fighting against them and trying to resolve it. So how effective are these strategies? Well, in reality, some of the things that you've probably come up with that you've tried already are actually things that could be helpful. For example, exercising more or having a good bedtime routine would usually be helpful. The difficulty is that when we do this in a very rigid and fixed way in order to avoid sleeplessness and to control sleep, then actually they often become part of the problem. This is because the stress of striving for something switches on our arousal system and makes us feel more alert. The reality is that we cannot control when we sleep. We can only facilitate the conditions mentally and physically that are going to help put us in the right state for sleep. The other problem with putting all of our focus into sleeping is that actually we start to neglect some of the other things in life that are really important for us. Ironically, this can mean that we do less of the things that can be really helpful for sleep and less of the things that bring joy into our life and help us to cope with the lack of sleep. This is the vicious cycle of poor sleep. For some reason, we find ourselves struggling to sleep. Not surprisingly, we start to worry about it. What's happening to me? I need to sleep or I'll feel dreadful tomorrow. What if this keeps happening? Then, as thoughts, feelings and behaviours are all linked, we react to this worry by changing our behaviour and doing everything we can to ensure we sleep. If our attempts to control our sleep don't work, which sometimes they don't, we then get more stressed. We also invest less energy and time in other things that are important to us. This means we try even harder than before to sleep well, which inadvertently leads to worse sleep. In treating insomnia, we want to get the right balance between getting you to do more of the things that are helpful for sleep, whilst at the same time trying not to fight sleeplessness or force your sleep. Think about this for a moment. If you were in quicksand, what would your instinctive response be? For most people, their instinct is to move their arms and legs quickly in order to stay at the surface, whereas in reality, this actually accelerates the speed at which they would sink. The very thing they have to do is what feels totally counterintuitive, and that is to lie back, to spread themselves out, and to attempt to stay fairly still. So in order to sleep well, we need you to do something that feels counterintuitive. Firstly, that's to strive less, to let go of attempting to control or force sleep. We will look more at this during video 4. Secondly, that is to be willing to tolerate the discomfort of sleeplessness. This is because it is not unusual for someone to sleep a little less in the early stages of treatment. So now I want to talk about sleep hygiene, but I really don't want to labour on this. I know that most of you will actually already be putting in every sleep hygiene measure that you can imagine. And in fact, as we've already highlighted, when we put lots of effort into something and we're striving for it, it can actually make it more difficult to sleep well. So please do your best to go forward with these. But think of these strategies as ways of building good foundations for sleep. They're not the be-all and end-all, and you will absolutely know that doing sleep hygiene perfectly is not going to fix your insomnia. Caffeine. Please avoid having caffeine in the 8 hours before bed. This is because caffeine has a half-life of around 6 hours. That means only half of it will have dissipated from your body in a 6-hour period. You will find caffeine in tea, coffee, Coca-Cola, Lucozade, Red Bull, some cold and flu medications, and some painkillers, so please look at the labels. Alcohol. Many people find that alcohol has a relaxing impact on them prior to sleep. However, it tends to disrupt sleep in the latter parts of the night. Nicotine, in a similar way to alcohol, it often has a relaxing effect initially, but then acts as a stimulant later on in the night. So again, please avoid smoking, vaping in the hours before bed and overnight. Exercise. I know you will have all heard so much about exercise. Exercise can have a really positive impact on our health, on our mental health, on our confidence levels, and on our sleep. So we'd really encourage you to do a little exercise, ideally every day. This doesn't need to be major amounts of exercise. So something that's going to get you sweaty and out of breath is ideal. And if you're not doing any exercise at the moment, it's better to do 5 minutes a day than it is to do 35 minutes at the weekend. We know that for sleep, exercise doesn't usually have an immediate impact. So it's not like we can do our exercise one day and then find we sleep brilliantly that night. The impact appears to be accumulative. So people who introduce a new exercise regime typically find a couple of months down the line that they are sleeping better. The other thing about exercise is that it increases our body temperature and increases the release of certain chemicals in our body, which actually can interfere with sleep. So ideally, avoid exercising in the last 3 hours prior to going to bed. Light exposure. It's really important to get light at the right time. In the morning, our body expects to get light. This helps to synchronize our body clock and means that all the systems and functions within our body can occur at the right time in the right way. The most obvious function that is regulated by light is our sleep cycle. When it's light, we tend to be awake, and when it's dark, we're meant to sleep. If you want to be sleeping at the right times, it's really helpful to get your light at the right time. So within an hour of waking, please do your best to get outside for around 15 to 20 minutes to get some outdoor lighting. If it's a dull day, that's fine. It will still be brighter outside than it is indoors. Equally though, our body needs the contrast of light with darkness in the evening. Hundreds of years ago, this would have been really easy. There was no electronic lighting, and when it got dark everywhere. Nowadays though, we tend to have our lounge lights on and be watching screens in the evening. This means we get a lot of blue wavelength of light, which interferes with the production of melatonin. Melatonin is the hormone that makes you feel sleepy. It's like a vampire hormone. It doesn't come out unless it's dark. So please be sure to think about how you can reduce the lighting in your home. Use dimmer switches, use floor-based lamps, and avoid your screens in the hour to an hour and a half before bed. I know this is really difficult, but honestly, it will pay off. Bedroom environment. I'm sure you've already done this, but of course it's really important to have a bedroom that is cool, comfortable, quiet, and dark. Really dark. Please think of your bedroom as a place that cues sleep, that tells your brain that it's time for sleep. So if you've got any clutter that you can clear away, if you can move your laptop out, then that's all going to be beneficial for your sleep. So you've now reached the end of video 2, Embracing Change. Thank you so much for listening so far. Everything that you've heard in video 1 and 2 are like the foundations of a house. The foundations are really important, but by themselves, they're actually not much use at all. We're going to build on these foundations in the next few videos, the next one being training the brain. I hope you will join me in a moment to hear that.